Well, welcome everyone to this BuzzSumo webinar. The purpose of the webinar this afternoon is just to give you an overview of BuzzSumo and to take you through the key features. One of the things I also want to run through is a new feature that we released today on backlinks data. So for those of you who know BuzzSumo, that will be new and I can take you through that. I'm going to run through things in about 30 minutes, the whole webinar. So hopefully it won't take up more of your time than that. We do then run specific webinars on things such as competitor tracking, outreach monitoring, and those sorts of things, which you can find on the webinars page. So you can book into more specific webinars, but this is an overview for the next 30 minutes. So, right, I'll just move into full screen mode just so that you can see my screen a little bit better. So just to take you through some of the key features of BuzzSumo, there are four key items at the top here. One is top content, so you can find the most shared content and who's amplifying it. Influencers, so you can do an influencer search and find influencers in any particular topic area. Content alerts, so we can send you content alerts whenever a site publishes new content or whether a keyword is mentioned. And finally, content analysis report. So I'm going to run you through these different elements of BuzzSumo. As a starting point, most people use BuzzSumo to find most shared content when they first come to it. So I can type in a topic such as e-learning and just hit search. And what BuzzSumo will do is bring me back the most shared content for that particular topic. So here I can see that the most shared content on e-learning in the last year was 12 most free popular courses for professionals. I can filter over on the left-hand side in a number of ways. So I can filter by date. So if I just wanted to see content, the most shared content in the past month, I can create a new list and see the most shared content in the last month. Once I have the data, I can also refilter. By default, it's organized by the total number of shares, but you could just resort. So you say you want to see, I don't know, the most shared pin interest content, and we can resort by any particular network. So we can resort by Twitter shares as well. So the first thing you might want to do is find the most shared content, what's trending in your particular topic area. And you can do that simply through a topic search. You can also filter by content type. So if you just wanted to see videos, you could untick the items here on the left-hand side and just search for the most shared videos or the most shared infographics if you want to do that. What you can then do once you've got the data is the first thing you can do is you can export it. This is a pro-only feature. And today I'm going to show you everything that's in BuzzSumo Pro. There is a free version of the tool where you can do unlimited searches and get results back. But I'm going to show you all the features, and a number of them are pro-only features where if you're a paying subscriber to BuzzSumo. But if you're a paying subscriber, you can export all of the data, and we provide a lot of data in that, including a lot more data than you can see on the screen at the moment. We show you the results. If you hover over items, so if you can see that, sometimes you can see the, we've now changed it. You can see the date published, so you can see the title of the article, the site that it was published on, the author, and the date the article was actually published. So you can see that instantly there. The other things you can do, and I'll take you through these, is you can view backlinks. So you can view the articles that link to this piece of content. You can also view the sharers of a piece of content, so who's amplifying this piece of content. And you can also share this piece of content via your particular network of choice. And I'll take you through these elements in a bit more detail in a moment. So that's a quick overview. Just do a search. This is the sort of data you get. You can do a lot more, though. You can also search for a particular domain. So if I wanted to see the most shared content for, say, a competitor or any site, I can put their domain in. So in this case, I've just searched for elearningindustry.com, which is one of the big e-learning sites, and I can now see the most shared content on this particular domain. So you could do it for your own domains, you can do it for a competitor domain, and you can see what their most shared content is. You can also do more advanced search options. So you could search for topics within domains. So if I wanted to see what content e-learning industry has published about MOOCs, which is a slightly odd name, but it means massive online open courses, I could search for that. Oops, and there's nothing in the past month. If I go to the past year, so in the past year, I can now see the most shared articles on that particular domain for that particular topic. And I could run this particularly for big sites. So if I wanted to see the most shared content, let's say on linkedin.com on marketing, I can search for that. Or I could search for the most shared content on forbes.com or Harvard Business Review on particular topics. So you can do a domain search, but you can also search for a topic within a domain. You can also search for subdomains. So the Daily Telegraph, which is a newspaper over here in the UK, has subsections such as science sections. And if I search for a subdomain, I can see the most shared content for a subdomain. So you might want to do that, just search for a blog category of a site. You might not want to search for the most shared content of all content on the site. So it gives you options there. You can also use operators such as or and, for example. And the other thing you can do under here is you can save searches. And this is quite a nice feature. So on the left-hand side are my saved searches. So if I want to look at my e-learning industry site search, you can see that I'm searching for the most shared content on 3 different domains, e-learning feeds or elearningindustry.com or Edutopia. So more complicated searches, you can set them up, you can save them, and then you can just run them as you want. I've got one here for SEO sites this week, and this is set up for the past week. It searches across 4 of the main SEO sites, just so I can see what's trending in SEO from those particular sites. So that's the first thing that you can do, is you can find the content that's resonating, and you can instantly see the headlines and things that are working. You can also see what was the most shared post by a particular author. So we see there's Matthew Barbie here. If I click on Matthew's name, it'll go away and find me the most shared content that Matthew has authored. And so I can see other content by a particular individual. So if I want to track an individual, I can search back by a particular individual. If I just go back to my e-learning search, I can also see who shared the content. So if I say, actually, this is an interesting article, I'd quite like to see who shared any particular article here. I can use this button called View Sharers, and this will show me people who shared this particular post. So if I want to see who's amplifying, for example, a particular content item or one of my posts or one of my competitors' posts, I can use View Sharers, and I can now see who's sharing that content. And here you can see I don't follow any of these people, and I can click to follow them if I want. So I could simply click here, and I can now follow Andrew, who's a chief scientist there. And so I can follow them straight away. I can also resort these influencers by page authority, which comes from Moz, their average number of retweets, the number of followers they have. And I can also, if I want to, export this list. So again, I could get a list of people who are sharing my competitors' content, which may be people I want to reach out to. So the View Sharers button is a really nice one. The other thing I can do is view backlinks. If I search for a domain, so I search for BuzzSumo.com here, as soon as you do a domain search, you'll see that you have 2 tabs, content and backlinks. And backlinks we've launched today. And there are 2 ways you can find backlinks. You can view over here the backlinks for a specific article. So you can view the articles that link to this piece of content, or you can view the backlinks for this particular domain. We can take about up to a minute to run the backlinks. I've already prepared some here rather than having to go through and wait for it. So here I've got results for BuzzSumo.com, and we're simply showing all of the sites that link to BuzzSumo.com. In fact, I've filtered here by the past week. So let me go back to the past year. So I'm now running a search for all the backlinks to BuzzSumo.com over the past year. And so it's now returned that to me. And this is currently showing me 1 result per domain. So in here I've got results per domain. If there are multiple links, it's a question of whether you want to see them or not. At the moment, it's showing me there are 1,700 links to BuzzSumo, but there are only 900 root domains. And if I change this search to say I want to see all links to BuzzSumo, this will now show me all of those results, but you'll find there are multiple ones from particular domains. So, for example, here, this first article is a link from Social Media Examiner. this is a link from a different post, but also from Social Media Examiner. So it's now showing me all 1,700 total links. As I say, if I just want one result per domain, that will remove them, and I'm now seeing just one result per domain. I can export that list as well, so I can see who's amplifying my competitor's content by linking to it. So I can see amplification in two ways. I can see who's sharing the content and whether I want to build relationships with them. I can also see who's linking to the content to amplify it, and that gives me the opportunity to reaching out to those sites or to some of those authors. So I can see Kevin here has nicely published a post which is mentioned BuzzSumo. So you can see the individuals who are authoring posts that you might want to reach out to as well. And as I showed earlier, you can look at all links to a domain, or you can look at links just to a specific page. So this is a nice new feature that we've only launched today on BuzzSumo. So you can see content amplification in two ways. You can see both the sharers, and you can see the links to content. Before I move on, I'm just going to check whether there are any questions. Let's just check. No more questions, so I shall carry on. So I'll just check back in periodically. If I go full screen, unfortunately, I can't see the panel showing me the questions. So that's in terms of a straightforward top content search. So you can search for any topic or a domain. Next thing you can do is you can search for influencers. So let's stick with the topic of e-learning. I can search for all the influencers in e-learning. And by default, we produce you a list sorted by relevance based on our algorithm of who we think are the key influencers. You can refilter this list in lots of ways. You can refilter by the page authority of their site or blog. You can refilter by the number of followers, by the average number of retweets that they get, for example. So there are a number of things you can do to resort the content. Other things you can do is you can filter by type of influencer, but you could also ignore broadcasters. For example, in this list, just check, but yes, in this list, I've got the e-learning site, I've got elearningindustry.com and e-learning learning. I know this industry quite well. I know there are three sites that really aggregate content and distribute it, but they don't particularly engage or retweet. And so we have the option here to ignore broadcasters. So anyone who's got a reply ratio of less than 4%, we consider a broadcaster. They're not likely to reply to you or to retweet. So if I click ignore broadcasters and refilter, what you'll see is those three have been now taken out of my list. So we're ignoring the broadcasters. As we did before on all of the content here, you can export the content. Again, this is a pro-only feature, but you can export this complete list so that you might want to import into a CRM or to use in other sites and tools. You can also filter by location. So if you said, I want to see all the e-learning influencers in Brighton, for example, it will pull you back a list of the people who are influencers in a specific city. You can do it by country. We tend to find that cities work much better than countries. So it's better to filter out by location in terms of cities. So outreach, really interesting thing in terms of how you reach out to people. So you can then follow them. You can also view the links that they've shared. So if I just refilter here, just to get to know them. So if you start following somebody, you want to get a little bit more about knowledge about what they share, how do we engage them. Tom here, who I know is a big influencer in the learning market, but if I look at the links that Tom shared, we'll now bring back all the lists that Tom shared, but we can also analyze them by domain. And what I can then see is, which domains is Tom sharing most often. And what I can see is actually half of his shares, 54%, are from his Articulate site, and another 22% are also from his Articulate site. So in reality, 76% of what Tom's sharing is his own content. So he's not quite a broadcaster, but he's sharing a lot of his own content. So it might be harder to get him to share my content. By contrast, if I look at somebody like Janet Cleary, who's the managing director of the e-learning guild in the US, I can again see the links that Janet's sharing and get to understand her a little bit better. If I look at the links that she actually shares, I can see that actually most of them, the largest single one is e-learning guild, which you'd expect, and she's the head of that. About 10% of her links are from there, but the rest are fairly evenly spread across other sites. So if it's of interest, Janet may be much more likely to share my content. So you can get to know your influencers a little bit more by viewing the links that they've shared, and you can follow them directly. So don't say too much more about the influencer search at the moment. If there are any questions, I can pick those up. But a good way of finding people who are influencers in particular topics. One further thing you might want to do is search for people who work for a particular company. So if I wanted to search for people who work at HubSpot, I can now find people who work at HubSpot. So not always at HubSpot, they may have mentioned HubSpot and we may have picked them up, but generally it's an inbound marketer here at HubSpot. This is a HubSpot Gold partner, so they're not an employee. Somebody at HubSpot, for example, another HubSpot partner. So you can find people who work for or partners with particular companies. So that may be useful as well. If you're looking for particular people to reach out to, you may want to then refilter this list by, say, numbers of followers. So if I refilter by numbers of followers, the big ones, obviously HubSpot itself, Brian, who's the CEO, etc. But I can start to filter down, see people that I might want to reach out to. So an inbound marketing person at HubSpot, maybe that's someone I want to reach out to. So a little bit there about simply finding people through the influencer analysis tool. Content alerts, my favorite part of BuzzSumo. You can create 4 different types of content alerts with BuzzSumo. The first one is straightforward. It's a keyword or brand alert. So here you can set up a keyword alert. So I'm just going to use BuzzSumo for the moment. I can give this alert a name, such as BuzzSumo. And then as we crawl content, and we're crawling content all the time on the web, as we find something which includes that keyword, we can alert you. And we can alert you if it's in the article text and the title, or we can alert you if it's just in the title and topic. If it's a common word, you probably only want it in the title and topic. If it's a less common word or brand name, you might want it in the article text as well. You can get the alert in real time or as a daily digest. And if it's a daily digest, you can choose your local time to have that mailed to you. And you can choose also to get alerts by language. So you can choose the language you want. So you might just want content in Spanish or content in German. We're actually in the process of adding a language filter to the top content search. So shortly you'll be able to do all your top content searches by language as well. But at the moment it's already available in the alerts. You might want to set a minimum number of shares. So rather than getting sent everything that mentions BuzzSumo, you might say, let's set a quality threshold. Just alert me when something's had 10 shares or 50 shares. Or if I really want really high quality stuff, maybe I only want to be alerted when it's had 100 shares. And I can choose which email to send that to, which could be your own email address. It could be any email address. It could be a colleague that you might want to send it to. So that's straightforward. That's a keyword alert. And you can get that emailed to you, but it will also appear in your dashboard. Here I'm looking at my dashboard on the left-hand side of my alerts here. What I'm showing is my dashboard for BuzzSumo. You can see I've set it for 0 shares because I like to see things instantly they're mentioned. So I can see that 56 minutes ago, Blogging Wizard published a post which mentioned BuzzSumo. And this is fairly much what you get in your email, the title, the author, etc., and a little snippet to see if it's something that you want to explore further or you want to share. As I say, I've set it for 0 shares, so you can see these are very few shares at the moment, but they will grow quite a lot over the day. So there's another one 1 hour ago. This was one. Top content promotion tools was mentioned 2 hours ago. This one was mentioned 2 hours ago as well. So there are a number of mentions of us today, which is all very nice. So you get a dashboard as well, so I can see the alerts for my keyword for BuzzSumo. Second type of alert, which I like, is a domain alert. This is different because this works just for a specific domain. So this time, rather than putting BuzzSumo as a keyword, I would put in buzzsumo.com. And now what we'll do here is every time that domain publishes a new piece of content, we'll send you an alert. Again, you can have that in real time or as a daily digest. Again, you can set a minimum threshold level, so don't bother me unless it's had 10 shares, 20 shares, for example. But rather than having to go away and look for competitors or competitor content, you'll get an alert instantly they publish new content, or at least within a few minutes once we find it, so you'll be alerted. So I really like domain alerts as a way of keeping tabs on my competitors and what they're doing. Another useful one is a link alert, which is almost the reverse of a domain alert. So if I put a URL in here, buzzsumo.com, what the link alert will do is it will alert me every time somebody links to buzzsumo.com. So as opposed to when buzzsumo.com publishes, every time somebody links to buzzsumo.com, I can get an alert. So I might want to see who's linking to the content. Is that an outreach opportunity for me as well? Do I want to comment on it? Do I want to approach the author about maybe writing something about our own content? Of course, you can use the new backlinks features as well to see what links a site had gained in the last month, for example, and analyze those. But a link alert's really useful for doing that. And then finally, an author alert. You simply type in an author name, such as mine, Steve Rayson. And what we do is pick this up from author bylines. So you have to type in the name as it typically appears on their posts. The slight drawback of this one is if you're putting in John Smith or a very common name, we'll pick up content from all John Smiths. So you may need to use an advanced operator like a negative out a particular keyword. But quite useful if you want to keep tabs on being the first to know about content from a specific author. And so we will alert you. So there are 4 types of content alerts. And I say this is really powerful because you don't have to come back to BuzzSumo. We can just send you emails as and when you get the alerts, so quite useful. Another feature that I really like here is that you can create an RSS feed for an alert. So once we have an alert for BuzzSumo, we can turn that into an RSS feed, and we can then pull that into Feedly. We can pull it into If This Then That, for example, into other tools. We can display it on a website, so we could display, the most shared content this week from a number of different sites, for example, all displayed as an RSS feed. So that's quite a nice feature, which I used quite a bit. And as with all the other content, you can export the content. So you can export all of the alerts for content over a period and do further analysis around them. So with that, I'll just check again whether there are any questions. Okay, right. So questions here. Do all of the exports show more data than we see on the screen? The answer is they do, yes. So they typically provide a number of different items. So it might contain the date of a piece of content published, or I think we have that one. They contain an image thumbnail from URL from the post and a range of other things. So yes, there's more in the exports. Just play with the exports and have a look. I should have said earlier that you can have a full 14-day free trial. You don't need a credit card or anything. If you want to try BuzzSumo Pro, just sign up for the free trial, and you're happy to play away for 14 days and export, etc., and have a look at what's there. So like that. And another suggestion is it'd be great to search influence based on the Twitter tool they're using. So that's an interesting idea. Thank you for that. We'll have a look at whether we can do that. Yes. So depending on what tool they're sharing, whether it's Buffer or Hootsuite, for example. So thank you for that. We'll have a look at that. So just go back to show you some further analysis. The final thing I want to show you is reports. We offer a number of different types of content analysis reports. So I could do a content analysis report for, let's say, e-learning. These reports are run in real time against the database, so they can take up to a minute to run. I've already run one for you here, content analysis for e-learning, and I'll just show you what we change. By default, we show you the last 6 months, and by default, we tend to pull out 10,000 articles. Most don't have 10,000 articles, but if you do, we tend to limit it to that. You can change the date range, so you can put in a very specific date range that you want to search for. Just to show you what we see, we can show you that in this period of 6 months, we found 5,600 posts. They had this number of shares. So on average, a post on e-learning had 111 shares. And that's quite useful for giving you a benchmark. It tends to give you a benchmark. I don't know about you, but when I publish a post, if I get 50, 60 shares, is that good? Is that bad? It's good to have some form of benchmark for comparison purposes. I can see the average shares by network. So I can see that in e-learning, most shares are taking place on Facebook and second on Twitter, very little on some of the other areas here, on the other networks. And this varies a lot from topic to topic. I did a search earlier on kitchen design, and actually most shares on kitchen design are on Pinterest because they're often images. We can also see shares by content type. So we can see that list posts and Y posts are getting most shares. Interestingly, video not getting as many shares. So for any topic area, we can see what's being shared. We can see shares by date published to see if there's any pattern here. We typically find that Tuesday is the best day for most content, or certainly early in the week, but not true of all. Again, when I was looking at kitchen design, most shares are actually taking place on a Saturday, for example, which maybe we would expect. So we can see how they're getting shared by date published. This is an interesting one. The next one is average shares by content length. So here we're seeing the number of words in the content article. And we tend to find this, that longer form content gets more shares than short form content. In this case, there's nothing particularly long, sort of 3,000 to 10,000 words, but we can see this correlation that 2,000 to 3,000 word posts get more shares than 1,000 to 2,000 word posts. We find that's typically the case. But again, you'd have to search for your areas and see what works in your particular topic areas. We'll also show you the most shared domains for any topic. So we can see here that blogs, KQED, are the most shared, then Edudemic, for example, across all networks. So these may be good sites for me to outreach to get posts published on because they're shared very widely. I could refilter. I could see what was the most shared on Twitter, what was the most shared on Facebook. So this particular site, the KQED one, is shared a lot more on Facebook than others. On LinkedIn, actually on LinkedIn, elearningindustry.com is the most shared on LinkedIn. So if my campaign's around LinkedIn, that's where I'm focusing. elearningindustry.com may be the site I want to reach out to share some of my content or to get guest posts published. I can also see topics related to e-learning that are being shared. So school is the biggest one here, which is we would expect around e-learning, but I can see others, and MOOCs, which I mentioned earlier, is becoming very topical, and I can see that that's actually one of the strongest topics associated with it. So for any topic area, I can do content analysis. I can do exactly the same report for a domain. So I could do a search to see what was working for BuzzSumo.com or a competitor site. So I can do a content analysis report for a competitor site. I can also compare competitors. But here's a competitor report for BuzzSumo. So 35 articles in the last 6 months. Broadly, we publish one a week, slightly more than one a week. And we're averaging 118 shares. Currently, most of our shares are taking place on Twitter. How-to and list posts are most popular ones. And you can see we take our own medicine. We believe that posts published earlier in the week are the ones that get most shares. So you can see that we typically publish our posts on a Monday, as we did, I think, this week. And content length for us, our most shared posts are our longer form content. But we can also do a comparison. You have an option here to do a domain comparison, and I've run one here for you comparing BuzzSumo to Moz. So we can see that we only published 35 articles. Moz published 1,000 in the same period. Obviously, they have a lot of guest posts, etc. And whilst we are doing quite well at 118 average shares, Moz are doing much better at 371. And we can see that, again, in terms of the profile, they're getting a lot more, of course, but both of us are getting our shares on Twitter. And in terms of content type, their most shared content type are list posts. So they're doing better than us on list posts significantly. But interestingly, on how-to articles, they're getting 592 shares of a how-to article. We're actually getting 397. So in that particular area where we're publishing posts, we're doing quite well. In terms of shares by date published, we're publishing very little, generally at the start of the month. Moz, as we'd expect, publishing that much content, are publishing consistently across the week. This is interesting, though. Moz, as with us, are finding that long-form content gets most shares. And that's quite typical. It varies, again, if you did something like kitchen design, that's not the case. But the content analysis reports are really good to give you an overview of what's working in a topic area. So hopefully that's given you a flavor for BuzzSumo. There's so much more that I could show you, but it gives you a flavor. So for example, you can search top content by a specific range. So in the run up to Thanksgiving. We could see what was the most shared content on Thanksgiving last year, in the run up to Thanksgiving, and what might work this year, for example. So there's a lot that we can do and show you in BuzzSumo. I'll just check if there are any more questions from people. Okay, right, there are a number of questions here from Chris. Under content alerts, can you have more than one email address in the notifications? Currently, Chris, I think you can't, but I'll raise the point because I think we should be able to do that. You will get the alerts anyway in your dashboard, so you could just set up the email to go somewhere else, but I'll double check on that. I think at the moment you just send it to one email address, but there's no reason why we couldn't extend that. Next question. Is the video being sent out to attendees? Yes, I'm recording this webinar and I'll put it up onto YouTube a little later today. It takes a while to convert, but I'll send the video out. Another question, what's considered a why post? We're fairly literal on this. A how to post, a why post, and a how post are literally articles that begin with those words. So if the article headline begins with why, we call that a why post. If it begins with how to, we classify that as a how to post. If it's a video, obviously we pick it up that it's a video, and likewise we can pick up infographics very accurately. But the why, how to posts, and what posts we pick up with the start of the title. So I hope that answers that. I hope that's been useful. As I say, I will post up the video later and you'll get a copy of that. If you have any questions, just mail me at steve@buzzsumo.com. And I'll say look out on the webinars page on the site, because we're now running a series of very specific webinars. In fact, one's running later today. It's actually, it's quite late. Here it's 3:30 Pacific time to catch Australia and Pacific on competitor tracking with BuzzSumo. It's a specific webinar. It's also being repeated at 11:30 a.m. On Thursday Eastern time. So, but we'll be providing the details on the webinars. We're running those in full earnest from next week as well. So thank you very much for your time. I hope it's been useful. And yeah, any questions, just give me a shout. Thank you very much.